Let me summarize the first passage before we look at the questions. I will read and summarize quickly. 3 years ago, Valley Fraser Selin adopted a blonde husky mixed puppy whom she named Husk. Fraser Celine soon started looking for ways to curb the husk's totally wild behavior, she says, such as stealing food from the kitchen counter and barking incessantly at strangers. Based on the advice of a YouTube trainer, Fraser Celine started using an electronic collar or an e-collar that delivered a small shock when the husk misbehaved. But she says she felt yucky about it. So her dog was a little uncontrollable when she got this pup, so she tried to train it to control it, and she used an electronic collar which would give a small shock whenever the dog misbehaved. But the owner felt very uneasy about doing that. Fraser Celine rethought her approach after hearing about an animal trainer who taught a grizzly bear to cooperate with medical treatment using only positive reinforcement. So the earlier one was punishment: you misbehave, I'll hit you, I'll give you a slight shock. She was not comfortable with that. Then she heard about an animal trainer who trained a bear, a wild bear. Okay, a grizzly bear is a wild, ferocious bear, and she taught a grizzly bear to cooperate with medical treatment using only positive reinforcement. That means rewards. If that hulking animal, if that big animal could learn with treats and praise, she thought, why were dog trainers using prong and short shock collars? If a huge bear can be trained with positive reinforcement and rewards, why use punishment for smaller dogs? That was the catalyst into my advocacy, says Fraser Celine, who studied African wild dogs for her PhD and now works as a remote community liaison for Winnipeg Humane Society. What's her advocacy? She advocates. Advocates means supports independently for positive reinforcement training for dogs on Instagram. This is what she does. All right, she supports positive reinforcement for training dogs. Fraser Celine is not alone. So she is given an example of one person, but he says she is not alone. Many researchers, trainers, and veterinary and training professional organizations are advocating for greater oversight, greater supervision. Oversight here means supervision for dog training, which is unregulated in many countries. So we need greater supervision and control in countries where dog training doesn't have any regulations, including the US, though they sometimes disagree on the best path of action and choose to focus on the research that reinforces their preferred approach. So they no countries, including the US, don't have too many regulations. So people who want greater regulation for dog training have some preferences. There are approaches, right? Do you train a dog with rewards or a positive reinforcement, or through small punishment, small or big? And these approaches people differ on, and so they support their form of training. Right now, it's the wild west. That means there are no regulations, no laws, no rules. Says a student at Arizona State University with a background in animal behavior and dog training. She recently published a study that analyzed the website of 100 highly rated dog trainers across the US. So she went to a website, she did a study of 100 highest rated dog trainers across the US, which found that most gave no indication whether the trainer had relevant education or certification. So when you are rating people, they're rating it on other criteria. The rating is not in terms of relevant education or certification of the trainers. Anyone can identify as a dog trainer. They can put up a social media page. They can offer services to the public. There's no expectations for their education, their continuing education, or their standards of practice. So anybody can become a dog trainer by putting up a social media page. They can offer services to the public, and they don't have to. People don't expect that they will show proof of their education, their continued education, or their standard of practice, says Bradley Pfeiffer, an executive director of the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers, an organization that promotes science-based training standards. So there's an organization which says dog training should have scientific basis. People with little or no education in animal behavior may be advising owners on handling aggression. When you don't have regulations, you can have unqualified people uh, giving training. Some experts and organizations are pushing for greater regulation in the industry. Under an umbrella organization known as the Alliance for Professionalism in Dog Training, two major certification bodies have jointly proposed model legislation that they hope could be adopted on a state by state basis. So, some organizations have been formed which are trying to push for some sort of legislation on a state by state basis in America. The legislation would require trainer licensure by a state board. So there's uniformity in certification, create accountability standards, and require trainers to engage in continued education with new breakthroughs, research in the field. Whatever is there, you can upgrade your knowledge through continued education. But the push for regulation in the dog training sector has exposed a schism in the industry over using punishments versus rewards. So the when there have been a push for rules, regulation, some sort of a uniformity, that has given rise to or exposed a schism, a divide in the dog training industry. And over what is the schism? Rewards versus punishments. Under the proposed legislation, certifying bodies would be required to uphold a policy that prioritizes positive reinforcement. All these people say you should stress on positive reinforcement, but does not entirely rule out punishment uh, based approach, generally backed by research on the efficacy and welfare, and more popular among training professionals. They say, okay, rewards are fine, but it doesn't rule out punishment based approach, because they are saying that research shows that it's not that bad. Like it's based on efficacy, welfare, and it's very popular among training professionals. Although researchers and trainers largely agree on most points, they agree that punishment heavy approaches are harmful. They are at odds, they are divided about whether all out bans on aversive tools are productive. They say, okay, we should avoid punishment heavy approaches, but they are divided on the question. They're at odds, they have different opinions on the question of whether there should be a total ban on aversive tools, on punishment methods, because the approach may work in limited circumstances. Punishment based approach does work under certain circumstances. This is the passage. Why does Anna Mary Johnson say right now it's the wild, wild west? Remember that comment was made in the context of uh, lack of regulations, right? We will go back to the passage to confirm. Nobody can be punished even if a dog becomes dangerous due to wrong training. Has it said that when a dog becomes dangerous due to wrong training, nobody is taking action? That is why it's the wild, wild west. Irrelevant. They said the lack of regulation. Anybody can become a dog trainer. All you need is a website and you can and an Instagram. You can just start advising people. So there's no regulation, there's no uniformity, there's no certification. Those are the things they're talking about. Because in the field of dog training, one can do as one pleases, which is very different from anybody can act as a dog trainer or expert. In the second part, he's saying you can do what you want where dog training is concerned. You can do whatever you want with the dog, or you can do whatever you want in general. So this is very sweeping. This hasn't been given in the passage. He doesn't say because I'm a dog trainer, I can be King Kong, I can do what I want. He doesn't say that. He says wild, wild west. Why? Because in the area of dog training, there is no regulation on who can be called a trainer, what is the minimum qualification, what is the certification required. Those kind of regulations are lacking. That does not mean anyone can do as they want, because there are no rules as to who can become a dog trainer. Yes, no rules, no minimum qualification, no benchmarks, nothing. C is the correct answer. Let's just quickly look at D. because dog trainers are being churned out in large numbers because of high demand. Does he talk about the number of dog trainers? No, the type of people who becoming dog trainers, we don't know if they are qualified, they have the knowledge to be a dog trainer or not, because there are no rules as to who can become a dog trainer. So my correct answer is C.